The shift, the lobby didn't welcome them with the usual cold stillness. The air was different, denser, as if someone had stirred it recently, waking dust that still drifted faintly in unsettled waves across the marble. Something had passed through here, something that didn't belong. Leo whispered, "Mom, someone's been inside." She didn't correct him. He was right. The chandelier fragments still hung overhead, but the delicate crystals seemed tilted, shifted by a breeze that shouldn't exist. The piles of rubble looked subtly rearranged. Even the faint trail of dust that usually covered the floor was interrupted in places by strange patterns. Half footprints, dragged impressions, something too indistinct to name. Elena gripped Leo's shoulder. "Stay close to me." He nodded. They stepped past the reception counter, flashlight beams cutting slowly across the hall. Elena's heart pounded in a slow, steady rhythm, trying to match the cadence of her breath. The casino's silence felt crowded now, not empty, like a room full of people holding their breath in the dark. When they reached the corridor leading to the lounge, Elena stopped cold. The hatch, the hidden steel hatch they had uncovered beneath the tiles. It was open, not wide, just a crack, but enough to reveal a darkness deeper than anything the flashlight could reach. Elena's pulse sharpened, Leo's breath hitched. Someone had found it, or someone had forced it. Elena knelt slowly, her fingers brushing the metal edge. It was warm, warm. The hatch to the underground had never been warm before. It had always been cold as a tomb. Now, the faint heat radiating from it pulsed unnervingly against her skin. Leo crouched beside her. "Mom, did you open it yesterday?" She shook her head. "No, we closed it. I remember the sound of it sealing shut." "Then who?" A sudden noise answered him, a soft clatter deeper in the lounge. Metal against tile, not loud, not rushed. Someone was inside. Elena slowly rose to her feet, her heartbeat thickening, slowing, sharpening. The flashlight beam trembled slightly as she swung it toward the lounge. The air in the hallway felt colder now, despite the warmth rising from the opened hatch. It wrapped around her like fingers trailing up her arms, urging her to stop, urging her to turn back, but Elena couldn't. Not now. Whoever, or whatever, was here. She had to face it before it found something she hadn't meant to expose. She stepped quietly into the lounge. The room lay in semi-darkness, the smell of burnt fabric heavy in the air. Ash fluttered with the movement of her footsteps. The sealed steel door stood at the far end, unchanged, but the wall around it carried new streaks, long, dark smears scratched across the soot, as though something had been dragged. Elena's breath stilled. Leo's grip tightened around her sleeve. "Mom," he whispered, "someone is trying to open it." Not someone, something. She forced her gaze away from the smears and followed the faint trail of disturbed ash across the floor. Her light caught the glint of something small near the collapsed booth at the edge of the room. A crowbar, her crowbar, the one she had used to pry open the sealed wall. It lay on its side, dust brushed off its edges. Someone had picked it up. Someone had tried to use it. Elena bent slowly, lifting it with shaking fingers. The metal felt wrong in her hand, warmer than the air, as though freshly held but recently discarded. Leo's voice trembled. "He's been in here." "Not he," Elena whispered. "We don't know who." But the thought chilled her bones, because if someone had entered the casino in the night, they could have easily followed them home. Watched them, waited, or worse, maybe they had never left the casino at all. Elena scanned the room again. That was when she saw it. A new footprint in the ash, large, deep, wrong, a shape too long, too heavy, too uneven to be human, like someone dragging a foot behind them, or pulling something immense. Leo's eyes filled with fear. "Mom, that wasn't there yesterday." "I know," she whispered. The room suddenly felt too tight, too dangerous, too alive. She grabbed Leo's hand. "We're leaving, now." But as they turned toward the hallway, Elena felt something, a cold draft drifting up from the open hatch, carrying an unmistakable scent. Heat, smoke, and something metallic, fresh. Wet? Leo froze mid-step. Mom, do you smell that? She didn't answer, because the scent told her a truth she never wanted to face. What waited in the sublevel wasn't sleeping. It wasn't trapped. It wasn't gone. It was moving. It was rising. It was already on its way up. As the casino's air thickened, Elena realized that the sealed vault wasn't the only danger beneath the ruins. Someone else was searching for it, and they were already one step ahead of her. The moment Elena smelled the metallic sting rising from the open hatch, her instincts shifted from curiosity to survival. It wasn't the stale cold they'd felt before. This was different. It carried heat, fresh heat, mixed with the unmistakable tang of metal scraped too hard, too recently. And beneath it lurked something sharper, something almost copper-like, something that shouldn't have been there. She gripped Leo's hand tighter. "Don't look down," she whispered, but Leo had already inhaled too deeply, his face tightening in alarm. "Mom, something's climbing up," he said, voice trembling. Elena didn't wait for confirmation. She backed away from the hatch, pulling Leo with her, keeping her eyes fixed on the jagged seam in the floor. The darkness below felt heavier now, a breathing void, alive, shifting, impatient. Dust trickled upward as though pulled by a current rising from below. Leo whispered, "Mom, we have to run." "We will," she breathed, but not blind. She lifted the flashlight, angling the beam toward the edges of the hatch opening. But the darkness swallowed the light in a way that made her skin crawl. It didn't scatter. It didn't reflect. It swallowed. As if something down there absorbed light instead of being revealed by it. A faint metallic tap echoed from below, then another, closer, deliberate, the same pattern they'd heard behind the sealed door. But no longer distant, no longer muffled. This time it carried upward with intent, as if whatever made that sound wanted them to know it was coming. Elena's heart hammered. She moved backward, guiding Leo around the far side of the lounge, avoiding the deeper shadows. But the casino didn't protect them. It twisted around them. As she reached the hallway, Elena froze. Something had changed. The thick layer of dust in the corridor, usually undisturbed except by their own footprints, was streaked with a new path. A long, smooth drag that cut straight through the center of the hall like a wound. It curved toward the lounge, toward the hatch, as if someone had carried something heavy and formless from another part of the building and abandoned it here. Leo saw it too. "Mom, that drag wasn't here when we came in." "No," she whispered, "it wasn't." Her breath turned shallow. Someone had been inside. Someone had walked this hall. Someone had left the hatch open. And someone had dragged something back toward the sealed steel door. She felt the casino watching her, pressing against her thoughts, urging her to understand the danger she now stood inside. A sudden scraping sound echoed from the hatch behind them, a quick, sharp, metallic rasp that jolted Elena forward. She spun around just as a gust of air rushed upward from the depths, carrying a faint rattle of chains. Leo's hand crushed hers. "Mom, don't look," she said again, but she couldn't tear her own eyes away. She listened. A heavy breath rose from beneath the hatch, not human, not mechanical, a thick exhale of heat against cold air. Then silence for a moment. She thought whatever lurked below had stopped moving, but then a soft thud, another, and another, each one climbing. Elena's fear sharpened into something clearer. She pulled Leo forward, forcing her steps to remain controlled. "We're getting out of here, slowly. Don't run unless I say so." Leo nodded, though his small body trembled with each step. They moved back into the main lobby, where pale daylight filtered through the broken windows. Elena breathed deeply, her lungs desperate for clean air. But when they reached the front doors, she stopped dead. The doors were open, wide open. They had not left them that way. Wind rushed inside, stirring debris into spiraling eddies. The casino's lobby felt exposed, vulnerable, as though someone had invited the outside world in for the first time in decades. Leo's voice broke into a fearful whisper. "Mom, did someone leave?" Elena didn't answer. She didn't dare, because the footprints in the dust were wrong. They trailed from the entrance, inward, not outward, and they weren't hers. They weren't Leo's. They weren't the warped shape she'd seen in the lounge. These prints were large, heavy, but unmistakably human. Boots, fresh, new, a second threat, not from below, from above. Someone else had entered the casino last night or early that morning. Someone who had discovered the hatch. Someone who had started searching for the same secret she and Leo were trying to uncover. Someone who walked deep enough into the ruins to leave those drag marks and try to pry open the sealed steel door. Elena felt her pulse spike. Two dangers, one below, one above. Leo tugged her sleeve. "Mom, who is it?" Elena breathed slowly, trying to keep her fear sharp and useful. "I don't know," she whispered. "But someone wants what's down there, and they're willing to go deeper than we thought." She moved toward the open doors, stepping into the light. The desert air hit her face, cool and immediate. She scanned the parking lot. A fresh set of tire tracks cut across the dirt, large, mud still wet, recent. Someone had come here while she was away, and someone had watched the casino long enough to slip inside before she arrived. Leo pressed into her side. "Mom, we're not the only ones looking for the vault." "No," she whispered, "we're not." Her eyes drifted back to the casino, dark, hollow, trembling with secrets too old to stay silent, and she felt the truth settle into her bones. Someone was ahead of them, watching them, following their progress, and the thing rising from below was no longer the only threat. The danger now had a human face, and humans, she knew, were far more unpredictable. As the wind swept through the open doorway, whipping dust across her feet, Elena realized the race for the vault had already begun, and she and Leo were no longer searching alone. Someone else was hunting. Someone who didn't want to share what waited in the dark. By the time Elena returned to the casino the next morning, the sky above the desert was a bruised wash of gray, the kind that promised a storm without ever delivering one. The air felt charged, restless, as if the entire landscape anticipated what she was about to face. She stepped out of the car slowly, scanning the wide stretch of dust and cracked earth around her. Every shape, every shadow felt like it carried intention. The casino stood at the center of it all, dark and skeletal against the horizon, its jagged silhouette resembling a fortress hiding something it could no longer contain. Elena felt its presence before she took her first step. It was different today, alive in a way she hadn't sensed since the knocking behind the steel door. Leo stayed home this time, she made sure of it. After what she saw in Chapter 7's final hours, the human footprints, the drag marks, the open hatch, the heat rising from below, Elena understood the truth. Whatever was happening inside this casino had crossed the boundary between curiosity and danger, and she would not risk Leo stepping 1 inch closer to it. She checked the crowbar, tightened her gloves, and slipped the flashlight into her pocket. Her breath came out slow, steady, controlled. She had one goal now: open the vault. Reveal what Victor Laskin died protecting, and stay one step ahead of whoever was hunting the same truth. As the lobby doors groaned open under her hand, Elena felt the casino breathe around her. Dust rose in slow spirals under the pale beam of morning light. The chandelier fragments chimed softly overhead, stirred by a breeze that didn't come from outside. She stepped inside, cautious and deliberate. The front lobby bore new signs of intrusion. The footprints from the previous day were deeper now, overlapping more heavily, trailing in several directions. Someone had moved fast and someone had carried weight, but no bodies, no blood, no sign of struggle. This wasn't desperation. This was methodical. She swallowed. Whoever had broken in wasn't wandering aimlessly. They were searching, hunting, digging for the vault. Elena followed the footprints toward the west corridor, her heart beating a steady, heavy rhythm. The hallway felt colder now. Ash from the burnt wallpaper drifted like gray feathers under each step she took. The lights from her flashlight carved long shadows across the walls, stretching them into crooked, trembling shapes. When she reached the lounge, she stopped in the doorway. Something had changed, and violently. The sealed steel door looked different. The soot surrounding it had been disturbed, smeared into chaotic streaks. Deep gouges clawed through the blackened plaster, as though someone, or something, had tried to tear through the barrier with brute force. Elena moved closer, her breath catching. Fresh dents bruised the metal surface. 4, sharp, deep, unlike any tool mark a human could make. She reached out and touched one gently. The metal was ice, cold beneath her fingertips, but that wasn't what stole her breath. It was what lay on the ground below the door. A glove, a black, heavy, duty work glove, torn across the palm, still warm, her stomach twisted. The human intruder, the one who had tried to get into the vault, the one who had prowled the casino at night. They had stood right here. They had fought with something, or someone, over this door, and they had dropped this glove in the struggle. Elena stepped back, exhaling through trembling lips. The casino seemed to close in around her, its walls drawing tighter, absorbing her fear like it had done to countless visitors long ago. She turned slowly toward the far wall, scanning the debris with a sharper eye. That was when she saw marks, not footprints, not drag lines, but something worse, scorch lines, thin black streaks across the floor, fresh, sharp, and jagged, leading from the sealed door toward the corner of the lounge. Elena crouched to touch one. The moment her fingertips brushed it, a static jolt snapped up her hand. She yanked back with a startled gasp. The scorch line was warm, warm. The vault door hadn't just been forced. It had burned, reactivated, awakened. Elena rose quickly, pulse pounding. She followed the scorch lines to the far wall, and froze. The hatch she had closed, the hatch she had sealed. It was open. Again. Only this time, the metal lid lay fully pushed aside, as though kicked or thrown with tremendous force. Heat poured upward from the dark opening, stronger now, smelling faintly of oil and something metallic. Something recent, something alive. Elena stepped toward it slowly, each footfall deliberate. She forced herself to look down, to face the truth she feared more than anything. The ladder was illuminated by a dim red glow rising from below. Not fire, not sunlight, not reflections. This was artificial, old, weak, but real. Something underground had power. Something underground had light. Something underground had been activated. Her breath trembled out. The vault wasn't dead. The vault wasn't sealed. The vault wasn't abandoned. It was. Online, Elena leaned carefully over the edge, shining her flashlight downward. The beam vanished into a long shaft, the red glow pulsing faintly against the walls like a heartbeat. Then a sound drifted upward, slow, steady, mechanical, like gears turning for the first time in years. Elena staggered back. The vault was opening itself, or someone had started to open it. A tremor rolled through the floorboards, small but unmistakable. Dust shook loose from the ceiling, falling in soft clouds around her. The casino groaned deep in its bones, as though awakening after decades of sleep. Elena pressed a hand to her chest, steadying her breath. She wasn't imagining it. The vault was coming to life, and she wasn't alone in the casino. As the red glow deepened, illuminating the hatch like the mouth of an ancient furnace. Elena felt the truth settle cold and heavy beneath her ribs. Someone else was already inside the vault, and whatever they awakened was beginning to rise. As the faint mechanical hum grew louder from the depths below, Elena realized the vault wasn't just opening, it was calling, and every moment she hesitated was one more moment the danger beneath the ruins gained strength. The humming rose from beneath the hatch like a warning pulse, slow, steady, and ancient. Elena stood at the edge of the opening, the red glow from below illuminating her face in ghostly lines. For years, the hidden vault had slept under tons of concrete and ash. For years, silence had ruled its corridors. But now the deep machinery groaned awake, gears scraping against rusted pathways, lights flickering back to life like dying stars drawing one last breath. Something had triggered the vault. And it wasn't her. A tremor rippled through the lounge floor. Dust rained down from the charred ceiling in delicate bursts. The metal hatch frame vibrated faintly beneath her hand, shivering as though aware of the danger rising below. Elena pulled her hand back sharply. The vault wasn't just a room. It wasn't just a secret. It was a machine, a system, a self-contained world built to hide something Victor Laskin hadn't wanted anyone to find. And now it had woken. She forced herself to breathe, her knees tightening against the instinct to run. Not yet. Not until she understood what she faced. She aimed her flashlight down the shaft once more. The red glow pulsed deeper in the darkness, breathing in slow, rhythmic intervals, not random, not failing circuitry, timed, deliberate, like a heartbeat. Elena staggered back, the crowbar slipping from her fingers and clattering across the tiles with a metallic echo. The sound was swallowed by the casino's thick air, absorbed like a secret it couldn't afford to let escape. She pressed a trembling hand to her chest, willing her pulse to settle. Then she heard it, a new sound. Soft, thin, a faint metallic clinking rising from the ladder, climbing the rungs one slow tap at a time. Tap, 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 not footsteps, not climbing, like something brushing against the ladder as it moved below. Elena's breath stilled entirely. Someone was down there, someone was moving, someone was ascending. She stepped back instinctively, her hand flying to the flashlight switch. She dimmed the beam quickly, bringing the room into softened shadow. The red light from below glowed stronger now, filling the edges of the lounge with an eerie reddish pulse. Tap, 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 closer, no longer echoing faintly, no longer muffled. It climbed the lower rungs, one metallic scrape at a time. Elena's voice thinned into silence. She grabbed the crowbar, gripping it tightly in both hands even though the metal felt slick with fierce, wet. Another sound rose from below, a sharp inhale of heated air, a stuttered mechanical sigh, and then a faint clang like something being unlatched. Elena froze. Whoever opened the vault hadn't come alone. A sudden gust of hot air surged up the shaft, pushing dust outward in a swirling burst. The red glow flickered violently once, twice, then steadied. It had the unsettling rhythm of a machine rebooting. Elena backed farther away. Her shoulder struck a collapsed booth, sending a soft avalanche of charred upholstery falling to the ground. The sound echoed too loudly. She cursed under her breath. Below, the tapping paused. A long moment stretched across the room. Heavy, fragile, suffocating, until Elena could feel her heartbeat pounding against her ribs like fists searching for escape. Then a voice drifted upward, a voice she didn't recognize, a man's voice, weak, hoarse, struggling. Hold, still, don't move. Elena's blood ran cold. Not Victor, not anyone she had heard on the testimonies. A stranger, a living stranger. Someone was already in the sublevel, someone alive, someone close to the vault. She moved slowly toward the hatch, her breath shallow. She angled the flashlight downward again, careful not to let the beam touch the ladder. only the wall beside it. For the first time, she saw motion, a shadow, broad, human, someone climbing the ladder, body shaking with effort, one hand dragging something that scraped against metal. Elena's pulse spiked as the figure reached the midsection of the ladder. He wore a torn dark jacket, his fingers shaking uncontrollably as he pulled himself upward. Blood ran down his knuckles, fresh, stark against the red glow. His head hung low, hair matted, breath ragged. He looked like he'd been fighting something, or running from it. He didn't look like a man searching for riches. He looked like a man fleeing hell. He lifted his head slightly, his voice cracking through the rising hum. "Don't stay. Don't. Let it." His foot slipped, catching on a rung. He groaned sharply. Something below dragged metal again. Closer this time. Elena staggered back instinctively. "Too late," he gasped. A new sound rose from below, a sound Elena had never heard before, a sound that didn't belong to a machine or a man, a deep, resonant groan like metal bending, like stone cracking, like breath building inside something colossal. The man's head jerked upward, eyes wide with terror. "Run," that one word sliced through Elena's paralysis. She turned and the entire casino shook. A heavy tremor rippled beneath her feet. The chandelier fragments rattled violently overhead. Dust poured from the rafters in thick clouds. Elena sprinted toward the hallway, crowbar clutched tightly, legs trembling beneath her. She didn't dare look back, not at the hatch, not at the shadow climbing it, not at the thing rising behind him. The casino moaned in its bones, ancient beams groaning under the force of something waking. Elena reached the corridor, stumbling over debris. She grabbed the wall for balance as another tremor rolled through the floor. She heard the man scream, far away, then closer, then a sudden, brutal silence. The red light below flickered wildly, then steadied, then rose up the shaft like a living flame. Elena pushed herself toward the lobby, lungs burning, heart pounding hard enough to drown out every other sound. She didn't stop until she reached the front doors. One breath, two, three. She turned back. The casino was quiet again, too quiet, like something had gone still, listening. Whatever had awakened below was no longer content to stay hidden. It was rising, it was hunting, it was coming. As Elena stepped into the open air, the casino behind her pulsed with faint red light from its broken windows, like a creature blinking awake after a long, starved sleep. Elena didn't sleep that night, not after what she had seen, not after hearing a stranger scream into the hollow throat of the casino's underbelly, followed by that impossible silence, followed by the vault's red glow rising like a heartbeat crawling up from the dead. She sat alone at the kitchen table long after midnight, elbows on the wood, hands trembling against her temples. Every window felt like an eye. Every shifting shadow felt like a breath, not her own. And the worst part wasn't the scream. It was the last thing the stranger managed to tell her. Don't let it. He hadn't been warning her about treasure. He hadn't been warning her about a man. He'd been warning her about something. Something down there had woken. Something that drove a grown man into a panic so visceral, he almost clawed his way up the ladder with his bare hands. Something not meant to be touched. Elena stared at the blueprints spread across her table, the lines and notes swimming in her tired vision. She traced the hidden annex again, the sublevel, the sealed chamber, Victor Laskin's fortress beneath a fortress. She whispered to the empty room, "What did you do, Victor?" No answer came, but the walls felt colder. Leo slept on the couch in the living room, exhaustion finally pulling him under after hours of questions she didn't dare answer. She watched his small chest rise and fall, the gentle rhythm grounding her. But then something new, something she hadn't felt before, the faintest vibration under her feet, so subtle she almost dismissed it as her imagination, until it fluttered again and again, like a soft thump pulsing through the foundation of her home. Her breath hitched. She pressed her palm to the floorboard. It vibrated faintly, not constant, not mechanical, a pattern, thump, 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 thump. Her blood ran cold, not random, not settling pipes. Knocking, the same pattern the vault had given her from behind the steel door. It had followed her home. Elena shot to her feet, lungs tightening. She rushed to Leo and scooped him into her arms. He stirred, blinking sluggishly, confusion clouding his face. "Mom," he whispered, "we're leaving," she said sharply, grabbing her keys with one shaking hand, her voice trembling as the floor vibrated again beneath them. Leo's eyes widened. He clung to her, suddenly awake, suddenly aware. "It's here," she didn't answer. Some truths needed no words. They rushed to the car, the porch steps creaking beneath their weight. The wind outside whipped against her, stinging her face. She fumbled with the keys before finally sliding into the driver's seat, locking the doors and starting the engine. Her house sat behind her, dark, silent, watching, but underneath the silence, the faint vibrations continued, like distant footsteps walking circles beneath the earth. Elena gripped the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles paled. But she didn't drive away, not yet, because the next question burned through her fear. If the vault was waking, if something had escaped, if someone else was hunting the treasure, then she needed the one thing she didn't yet have, Victor Laskin's voice. The testimonies hinted at something, the photos hinted at more. But they weren't enough, not for what she faced now. She needed to know what Victor himself said in his final hours, the recordings, the rumors, the tapes Victor supposedly left behind. She turned to Leo. "We're not going far, but we're not staying here." Leo nodded without fear this time, just understanding. Elena drove to the only place in town no one ever visited after dark, the old sheriff's annex, now abandoned except for storage. But not empty. Inside those files, she knew, were the confiscated items from the Laskin investigation, testimonies, evidence, and if the rumors were true, Victor's final confession. She parked under the dim street lamp, the building looming ahead like a silent witness. Leo gripped her sleeve tightly as they stepped out, the gravel crunching underfoot. The annex door resisted at first, but years of rust gave way under Elena's shoulder. The stale smell of old paper and dust washed over them. Leo wrinkled his nose, but stayed close. Rows of filing cabinets stretched like steel tombstones across the room. One cabinet bore a crooked label, "Laskin Case Materials, Confidential." Elena's breath hitched. She opened the drawer. Inside lay cassette tapes, some in plastic bags, others loose with handwritten titles. She sifted through them until her fingers brushed the label that froze her in place. VL Final Session Unreleased. Her heart pounded once, hard, then steadied. This was it. The truth Victor hadn't lived to tell the world. She grabbed the portable recorder the archivist had loaned her earlier that week, popped in the tape and pressed play. For a moment, just static. Long empty static, then a crackle, a breath, a man's voice, trembling and uneven. "Victor Laskin, if anyone finds this, then they finally did it. They found the vault." Elena's spine stiffened. "It isn't money. It was never about money, not at first. It was about protection, about hiding something that should have been destroyed." Leo stayed silent, eyes wide. Victor inhaled shakily on the recording. "Someone helped me build it. Someone who shouldn't have existed in my world. Someone who taught me how to seal it, how to feed it, how to keep it quiet. Feed it." Elena's skin prickled. "But I made a mistake. I got greedy, and greed always calls to the thing down there, always." A loud bang echoed in the recording. Victor's startled voice shaking violently. "If you're hearing this, don't open it. Don't let it rise. It knows the sound of hunger, it knows the smell of fear, and it knows that if the door wakes. He paused. A wet breath, a low groan in the background, metal bending. Victor whispered the final words like a man confessing to a grave. It knows the way out. The tape cut off. Silence rushed in. Elena's hand trembled so violently the recorder slipped and clattered against the floor. Victor hadn't built a vault to hide riches. He had built a prison, and the thing inside had learned how to listen, how to breathe, how to wait. Leo whispered, barely audible, "Mom." What did he mean, feed it? Elena stepped back toward the door, her breath cold in her throat. Because she finally understood the truth behind the steel door, behind the sublevel, behind the stranger's scream. Victor hadn't been running from a crime. He had been running from his creation. And as the wind howled outside the sheriff's annex, Elena knew the vault was no longer waking. It was remembering, and whatever Victor had sealed away was hungry for more than silence. The recorder lay on the floor where it fell, the tape still spinning in a soft mechanical whir, as if Victor Laskin's final breath hadn't yet finished echoing through the room. Elena didn't move. She couldn't. Her pulse sat frozen somewhere between her throat and her spine, squeezing tight enough to hurt. Leo stood a step behind her, his small hand clutching the fabric of her jacket, eyes locked on the recorder like it might speak again. "Feed it," the words scraped across her mind like the edge of a dull blade. Victor hadn't been a man hiding money. He'd been a man hiding fear. And now she knew why he'd sealed the door with more steel than the casino itself was built from. He wasn't protecting a fortune. He was protecting the world outside of it. She knelt slowly, picking up the recorder with shaking fingers. The device felt colder than the room, cold enough to seep into her bones. When she turned it off, the silence that followed wasn't simple silence. It was weight, pressure, a thickness that settled onto her shoulders, reminding her that she had crossed a line she could never uncross. Leo pulled weakly at her sleeve. "Mom, what was he scared of?" The question broke her, not because she had no answer, but because she did. "Elena." Leo whispered again, voice trembling. "Is it alive?" The floorboards creaked beneath them. A soft groan of timber shifting to the rhythm of the storm winds outside. But to Elena, every tiny noise now sounded like breath, like movement, like something beneath the surface of the earth dragging itself closer. She swallowed hard. "We're not talking about that here," she said, forcing her voice steady. "We leave, now." She stuffed the tape into her bag, grabbed Leo's hand, and guided him toward the annex's exit. The building felt even emptier now, as if something had fled the room at the same moment they had learned the truth. Dust hung in the air like ash. The fluorescent lights flickered weakly overhead, buzzing in a frantic, uneven pulse. Outside, the air was cold enough to sting. Clouds pressed low across the desert sky, heavy and bruised, as if the land itself sensed something rising beneath its crust. Elena helped Leo into the car, her mind racing. She needed to think, she needed to prepare, but the truth pressed against her temples with brutal certainty. Whatever Victor trapped inside that vault, whatever he fed, whatever he feared, it wasn't dead. And now, because someone else had opened the hatch, it wasn't locked in either. Elena gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles pale. Leo leaned toward her, voice barely a whisper. "What are we going to do?" For a long moment, she didn't speak. She stared straight ahead, breathing slow, trying to find balance in the hurricane tightening inside her chest. "We're going back," she said finally, "to the casino." Leo gasped softly. "But why?" "Because someone opened that vault," Elena whispered, "and they don't know what they awakened. If we don't stop it, no one will." She didn't mention the stranger's scream. She didn't mention the glow rising up the ladder. She didn't mention the heat pushing upward from the sublevel like the breath of a living furnace. She didn't need to. Leo had heard Victor's message. He knew enough. Elena turned the key in the ignition, but froze when she saw something in the rearview mirror. A figure, standing by the annex door, still, dark, watching. Her heart lurched. The figure didn't move, didn't step forward, didn't raise a hand, it just watched. The silhouette was wrong, too tall, too broad, the shoulders uneven, as if something hung from one side or weighed down its posture. Elena's breaths came sharp and shallow. She slowly reached for the gear shift, and the figure stepped backward into the dark, dissolving behind the dead brush and the shadowed wall. Gone. Elena's pulse hammered in her ears. Leo turned. Frightened. What was that? Someone following us, she whispered, or something. The car engine rumbled to life. Elena drove away from the annex, her hands trembling on the wheel, but her mind wasn't on the road anymore. It was on the vault, on Victor's words, on the knocks behind the steel door, on the scream of the stranger trying to climb up from the depths. It was on truth she could no longer ignore. The vault wasn't a treasure chamber. It was a grave, a prison, a last resort built by a man whose empire had collapsed under the weight of what he created. And the monster he had sealed inside, whatever form it took, whatever hunger it carried, whatever intelligence guided it, it had not forgotten the world above, nor had it forgiven being locked away. Elena tightened her grip on the wheel. She wasn't just unraveling Victor's story anymore. She was stepping into its final chapter, the one he never survived. And as the storm clouds thickened over the desert, Elena realized that the truth inside that vault wasn't merely waiting to be found. It was waiting to be freed. By dawn, the storm clouds had thickened into a bruised ceiling over the desert. Winds clawed across the highway in long, ragged gusts, pushing grit against the windshield. Like a warning written in sand, Elena gripped the steering wheel with both hands, knuckles white, jaw tight. She had driven through the night with Leo asleep in the backseat, his small body curled beneath an old blanket. She needed him safe. She needed to keep moving, but the truth weighed on her. Heavier than the storm itself, the vault was open. Something had escaped, and a human threat was already looking for the same fortune buried beneath the ruins. Everything was spiraling toward a single point, a confrontation she could no longer avoid. She pulled the car onto the cracked dirt lot in front of the casino. The building sat rigid against the awakening sky, a dark silhouette cut from the bones of a forgotten empire. But today it looked different. It looked ready, as if the casino had spent decades preparing for this moment, when all the lies and all the secrets would collide in its hollow belly. Elena cut the engine. She gently shook Leo awake. His eyes fluttered open, fogged with exhaustion and fear. But when he saw the casino through the window, he sat upright immediately. "It's time," he whispered. "Yes," Elena murmured. He didn't ask what she planned. He didn't ask whether it was safe. He simply nodded, trusting her with everything in him. Elena brushed his hair back, the gesture soft but trembling. "I need you to stay in the car. No matter what you hear, no matter what happens. But no matter what, Leo." His jaw quivered. Not fear, determination. "Mom, please be careful." She managed a fragile smile. "I will." She stepped out into the wind, pulling the crowbar from the backseat. It felt heavier today, different, more than a tool, more than a weapon, a lifeline. And with each step toward the casino doors, the desert felt quieter, not from peace, but from anticipation. The doors groaned open with a sound like a creature stretching ancient bones. The lobby was dim, lit only by faint hints of daylight filtering through shattered skylights. The air carried a deeper chill than before, charged with something unseen. Elena swallowed hard. The footprints inside the lobby, the intruder's tracks, were fresh, deeper, leading toward the lounge. Someone had beaten her here. Someone had returned to the vault. Her pulse tightened as she followed the path. The casino felt like a labyrinth of old souls now, its walls breathing memories, its shadows shifting under the weight of something rising from below. She reached the lounge doorway and stopped. The room wasn't empty. 3 men stood near the sealed steel door, the intruders who had been tracking her, hunting the vault, following her every discovery. They hadn't seen her yet, their backs turned as they argued in low, sharp whispers. One kicked the debris angrily, another paced with a flashlight in hand. The third stood closest to the door, his hand pressed against the cold metal like someone listening for breath. Their voices cut through the silence. It's opening. I heard it. What's taking so damn long? Just shut up and watch the hatch. He'll come up eventually. He, the man who tried to escape yesterday, or something else entirely. Elena's heart clenched. She stepped silently into the room, crouching behind a fallen column. Her breaths came shallow, controlled. She peered over the cracked marble edge toward the open hatch in the floor. The red glow pulsed faintly upward, weaker today, but still alive, still waiting. One of the intruders leaned over it, his voice trembling just enough to betray fear. Whatever's down there, it's not human. The man at the steel door scoffed. Doesn't matter. We need what's in the vault. The rest is noise. Noise. They thought the vault held money, gold, treasures. They had no idea what Victor had trapped down there. No idea what had followed Elena home. No idea what they were inviting toward the surface now. Elena tightened her grip on the crowbar. She couldn't let them open the vault. She couldn't let them wake what Victor died to imprison. And she couldn't let them hurt Leo waiting outside. She rose from her cover, stepping forward with quiet, lethal determination. But before she could move another inch, a deep, resonant groan rumbled from beneath the hatch. All 3 intruders froze, the red glow intensified suddenly, flashing like a pulse. Then a metallic scream tore up the ladder shaft, long, painful, not animal, not human, something in between. The man kneeling by the hatch stumbled backward, falling onto his elbows, eyes wide with horror. It's coming up. It's coming. Another scream, closer, roaring up the metal rungs like hands dragging bone across steel. Elena's breath locked in her chest. She had no time, no choice, no more room for fear. She gripped the crowbar and stepped fully into the room. Get away from the hatch, she commanded. The men whipped around in shock. But before any of them could react, before any weapon could be drawn, before any threat could be spoken, a hand erupted from the hatch. Not a human hand, something larger, twisted, burned, flesh fused with scrap metal, fingers bent in unnatural angles, each tip glinting with rusted shards. It slammed onto the floor with a sound that shook the entire lounge. The intruders screamed. Elena staggered back. The vault had opened, and something Victor Laskin feared more than death had finally found the way out. As the creature pulled itself toward the surface, dragging chains and shadows behind it, Elena realized the showdown beneath the ruins had already begun, and she was standing in the middle of it. The hand clamped onto the floor like a rusted trap, crushing broken tiles beneath its weight. Dust erupted upward as the twisted fingers flexed, metal grinding against bone, bone grinding against something far older. The men stumbled back in raw terror, scrambling over each other as the ladder beneath the hatch trembled violently. Elena's breath stopped. Her heartbeat vanished into numb silence. Her world compressed into that one rising shape. A second hand emerged, scraped, burned, jagged, fusing metal and flesh into a grotesque sculpture of pain. Each movement sent a shrill metallic whine echoing across the lounge, like a cry formed from both agony and rage. The intruder closest to the hatch screamed, stumbling backward, "Shoot it! Shoot it!" But it was too late, far too late. A deep, guttural groan thundered from the dark shaft, so forceful the entire casino seemed to recoil, ancient beams shivering as dust poured from the ceiling. The creature heaved upward, dragging a massive, malformed shoulder into view. Elena fought the urge to run. If she ran, she'd never see daylight again. If she froze, she'd never see Leo again. She forced breath into her lungs, gripping the crowbar so tightly her fingers ached. The first intruder lifted his gun with shaking hands, but his courage failed before his finger found the trigger. The creature surged upward, a grotesque figure, half seared flesh, half corroded metal, fused by a fire too unnatural to belong to this world. Chains dangled from its torso, each link scorched black, clinking softly as they swayed. Its face, if it could be called that, was a mask of melted features, hollow eyes glowing faint red beneath sagging folds of ruined skin. A voice rasped from deep within its chest, not a roar, not a scream, but a broken, tortured moan that sounded like a soul tearing apart. The intruder nearest the hatch panicked, firing blindly. The gunshot cracked through the casino, but the bullet sank into the creature's shoulder with a dull thud. No blood, no reaction, no pain. Only a slow turn of its head toward the shooter, a sickening, deliberate acknowledgement. The man froze completely. The creature lunged. A single, massive swing of its fused arms sent the intruder flying across the lounge. His body slammed into the far wall with a sickening thud before collapsing into a heap that didn't move again. The other two men broke instantly, sprinting toward the exit in raw, feral terror. But the casino doors didn't greet them. Instead, the building groaned, heavy metal frames twisting, contracting, locking shut as if the structure itself refused to let anyone leave. Elena realized something horrifying. Victor hadn't built the vault alone. He built the casino around it, a prison inside a prison, a system that sealed itself when danger rose. The creature roared a low, trembling vibration that rattled Elena's bones and drove the men to their knees. One intruder scrambled beneath a fallen booth, clutching his flashlight like a weapon. The other tried prying the door open with his bare hands, screaming at the top of his lungs. Neither would survive if she didn't act. Elena stepped from behind the column, heart pounding with a clarity that sliced through her fear. She positioned herself between the creature and the exit, breathing slow, steady, controlled. Like she had done in every moment of desperation her life had thrown at her. She raised the crowbar. The creature's head snapped toward her. Its breath rattled out in thick, steaming huffs, each exhale carrying the stench of burnt metal and decay. Its eyes, hollow yet aware, locked onto her form, and for a brief, soul-stopping moment. It paused. It knew her, not as a person, not by name, but it knew her presence, the person who touched the steel door, who heard its knocking, who awakened the final mechanism of the vault. The creature stepped forward, dragging chains behind it with a sharp metallic scrape that sliced through the silence like a blade. Elena didn't back away. Instead, she spoke, her voice low, shaking, but firm. "I know why Victor locked you away." The creature froze again, the air thickened, even the intruders stopped screaming. Elena continued, her voice trembling only slightly. "He wasn't afraid of losing money. He was afraid of losing control of what he created." A distorted rumble echoed from the creature's chest, almost like a laugh twisted by suffering. Elena swallowed hard. "You're not here for gold. You're here for him. For what he promised you. For what he fed you." The creature stepped closer, the heat radiating off its mangled form, stinging her skin. Its shadow swallowed her completely. Then a distant sound, a voice, a tiny broken whisper carried by the wind seeping through the cracked walls. "Mom, Leo." He stepped into the doorway, small, fragile, terrified, holding the blueprint tube like a sword. Elena's heart stopped. The creature turned toward Leo, and its chains clinked softly as its body lowered, as if preparing to strike. "No." Elena lunged forward. She swung the crowbar with every ounce of strength in her body. It smashed across the creature's forearm with a sharp metallic crack. The creature recoiled, more surprised than hurt. It snapped its head back toward her, eyes glowing brighter, breath steaming heavier. She positioned herself in front of Leo, crowbar raised again. "You don't touch him," she shouted. The creature tilted its head, watching, calculating, remembering something she couldn't see. Behind her, Leo's voice shook. "Mom, there's something on its chest." Elena dared a quick glance. A metallic plate fused into the creature's body, etched with a code, a lock, a mechanism, part of the vault, part of Victor's final design. The monster wasn't just trapped in the vault, it was part of it, and that meant something she'd never imagined. Perhaps it wasn't just a creature, perhaps it wasn't even born a monster, perhaps it used to be a man. Elena's breath trembled as she realized the truth. Victor hadn't just fed the monster, he had turned someone into one, and as the creature towered over them, chains rattling, heat rising, Elena understood that the fight beneath the ruined casino had only just begun. Morning arrived slowly, as if the sun itself hesitated to rise over what had unfolded beneath the ruins. Elena sat on the cold steps outside the casino, arms wrapped tightly around Leo, her body still shaking with the aftershocks of the night. Sirens wailed faintly in the distance, growing closer, cutting through the muted silence that followed the creature's final collapse and the intruder's frantic arrests. The casino no longer glowed with the heartbeat-red light. The hatch had fallen silent. The vault had sealed itself once again, with a final metallic sigh that sounded almost like relief. It was over, the danger, the chaos, the chase through shadows, the monstrous truth buried by Victor Laskin's greed. And yet, as the police lights flickered across the broken windows, Elena's heart felt heavier than it ever had, because the ending had forced a choice she wasn't ready to face. Inside the ruin, surrounded by chains and melted metal, lay the truth she'd pieced together in the darkest moment of survival. The creature had once been human, a man twisted by desperation and greed, Victor's partner, victim, or accomplice. She hadn't needed a confession. The fusion marks, the machinery fused to bone, and the vault's activation chamber had told the story for him. Victor hadn't feared an intruder. He had feared facing what he had created, and when the time came, he had run. Elena hadn't. Leo rested against her side, silent, processing everything with the fragile resilience only children possess. His breathing steadied slowly, each breath a quiet reminder that he was still here, still safe, still hers. "Mom," he whispered finally, not lifting his head. "Are we okay?" Elena pressed her cheek gently to his hair. "We're safe," she whispered, though her voice quivered with exhaustion. "It's over now." But inside her, another voice whispered a truth she couldn't ignore. Now the world will want answers. Now the state will ask for proof. Now she must decide what to do with the vault beneath her feet. As police officers swept the area, gathering evidence and guiding the arrested intruders into patrol cars, Elena stood slowly. Her legs trembled under the weight of the night's terror. A young officer approached, gentle, wary, unsure how to speak to someone who had survived something no report would ever fully describe. "Ma'am," he said softly, "we'll need your statement when you're ready. What you found down there, it's going to take time to understand." Time, yes, time was exactly what she needed, but she also needed something else, something far more difficult. She needed to tell the truth, not the legend whispered about Victor's missing fortune, not the rumors of a cursed casino or buried gold, not the lies that had twisted themselves into town's memory. The real truth: Victor Laskin had trapped a monster below the earth, and in doing so had become one himself. As she stood beside the quiet police vehicles, the early morning light touched the casino's burned facade, softening its jagged edges. For the first time, it didn't look threatening, it looked tired, like a wounded thing finally allowed to breathe. Leo slipped his hand into hers, warm and steady despite everything he had witnessed. "What happens now?" he asked. Elena looked at the ruined building, at the shattered windows, at the door that had refused to open during the chaos, locking danger in until it was quiet again. Her voice was soft but resolute. "Now, we decide what to do with all of this." Leo nodded, trusting her without question. And in that moment, As dawn finally pushed the storm clouds apart, Elena understood the crossroads in front of her. She could walk away, leave the casino to be demolished, let the past bury itself for good, or she could step forward, tell the truth, expose everything Victor had hidden, and finally give the town, and herself, the closure no one had dared to claim. But there was more. In the creature's final breath, before collapsing into the vault, it had looked at her, eerily looked, and something in its eyes had softened, not human, not monstrous, but desperately tired, as if grateful or released. Elena swallowed hard, blinking back the sting in her eyes. The choice she faced wasn't about danger anymore. It was about integrity. It was about ending the story the right way. She tightened her grip on Leo's hand. "We're going to do the right thing," she whispered, "even if it's hard." He nodded again, quieter this time, because he knew exactly what she meant. The cameras would arrive, the investigators, the officials, the world, but she would stand in truth, not fear. As the sun rose fully over the desert, warming the ruins of the place that almost took her life, Elena understood that the treasure hidden beneath the casino wasn't gold at all. It was the choice she would make next, the choice that would define their future. And as she drew Leo close, she knew exactly which path she would take. The sun climbed higher as the morning unfolded, softening the harsh edges of the casino ruins and washing them in pale gold. The flashing police lights had faded now, replaced by the quieter presence of investigators walking through the rubble, stepping carefully around twisted beams and scorched flooring. Elena watched them from a distance, holding Leo close, and the weight of her decision pressed against her chest like a hand she could not see. Truth, it was never simple, never easy, never kind, but it was the only thing she had left that felt solid beneath her feet. When the lead investigator approached her, older, weathered by years spent chasing answers carved in shadows, he removed his hat and spoke gently. "Ms. Marquez, we'll need your account of everything, all of it." She nodded, though her heartbeat fluttered with nerves. "I'll tell you everything I know." His gaze softened. "Take your time." But time was the one thing she no longer had the luxury of stretching thin, because the truth she carried wasn't just about a criminal empire. It wasn't just about Victor Laskin's greed or the hidden vault beneath the casino. It was about a creature that had once been human, a life twisted by choices no one should ever have made. And now that she understood all of it, she couldn't bury the story. Even to protect herself, she knelt beside Leo, gently cupping his face. "I'm proud of you," she whispered. He blinked up at her, uncertainty mixing with hope. "For what?" "For being brave, for trusting me, for surviving this with me." Leo's throat tightened. "Are we going to be in trouble?" Elena shook her head softly. "No, not if we tell the truth." He nodded, and something small and warm moved behind his expression. Relief, maybe, a beginning. Elena rose, exhaling a long, steady breath. She turned to the investigator and began to speak. Her voice trembled at first, like a bird learning to fly after a long winter of silence. She told him about the sealed door, the hatch, the mechanical heartbeat of the vault, the twisted remains of a man who had become something monstrous, the mistakes Victor Laskin made, the final recording that revealed why he ran, why he sealed the vault, why he died afraid. The inspector just listened. No interruptions, no disbelief, only a quiet, solemn understanding. When she finished, her lungs felt empty, scraped clean, like she had poured out everything she had left inside. The inspector rested a hand against his belt. "You didn't have to risk yourself. Or your son. Most people wouldn't have gone back in there." Elena looked at the casino, its broken silhouette finally resting after decades of rage. "I wasn't just protecting myself," she said quietly. "If that vault stayed open, someone else would go inside. Someone else would suffer for the same greed that ruined Victor." "And you?" he asked. She looked down at her hands, shaking soot-stained, still carrying the echo of fear. "I didn't want to become greedy too," she whispered. "I didn't want the money. If it meant I became like him." The officer nodded slowly. You made the right choice. Right, not easy, not safe, but right. Leo stepped beside her, fingers slipping into hers. His small touch grounded her, anchoring her to something she had nearly lost, hope. The inspector cleared his throat gently. The state will review everything. The evidence you found, the risks you took, the information you brought forward, it won't go unnoticed. Elena blinked. What do you mean? He gave a half-smile softened by years of hard truths. This wasn't just a crime scene. You uncovered a fraud worth hundreds of millions, evidence, testimony, and you brought it all to us. Her breath stilled. Under state law, he continued, when civilians uncover stolen assets, hidden funds, or criminal holdings, even unknowingly, they're eligible for a finder's fee. Leo gasped. A finder's fee, like? Money? The officer nodded. A lot of money. Elena's heart fluttered painfully. But I didn't do this for money. I know, he replied gently. That's why you deserve it. The words fell over her like warm rainfall, melting the cold grip that had held her heart for so long. Suddenly, the weight of survival, the nights spent choosing between bills, the sacrifices stacked like stones on her shoulders, shifted, easing just enough to let light through. Leo hugged her waist, his smile blooming like sunrise. Mom, does this mean we're going to be okay? She felt something deep inside her loosen, a knot tied by years of fear, a tension she thought she'd carry forever. She knelt, pulling Leo into her arms. Yes, she whispered, voice cracking with emotion. It means we're going to be more than okay. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to imagine tomorrow without fear biting at her heels. A tomorrow built on truth, not secrets, light, not shadow. Her eyes drifted back to the casino's doorway. This nightmare had taken her to the edge of everything she feared, but it had given her one thing she never expected, a chance not just to survive, but to rebuild. As the officers continued their work and the desert sun rose higher, Elena held Leo close, knowing her life had changed forever, not because she found riches, but because she found the strength to face the truth and walk away from it with her soul intact. A year later, the desert looked different, softened by time, warmed by purpose, and no longer haunted by the shadow of the broken casino that once devoured everything around it. The ruins were gone now, cleared away piece by piece until not a single scorched beam remained, and in their place rose something new, something living. Elena stood outside the entrance of the Marquez Community Arts and Youth Center, the building's fresh white walls gleaming beneath the morning sun. Where twisted metal once cracked the skyline, windows now shimmered with color, stained glass panels crafted by local students, capturing the spirit of renewal in vibrant blues, reds, and golds. The desert winds no longer carried the echo of secrecy. They carried music, laughter, hope. The transformation had been slow, brick by brick, grant by grant, breath by breath. But today, it felt complete. Elena held the brass keys in her hand and exhaled softly. They were warm from the sun, but still carried a weight she never stopped respecting. A year ago, she'd stood outside the burned remains of a casino, gripping fear like a heartbeat. Now she stood before a building, filled with life, children learning instruments, teens painting murals, families finding a place to heal. The kind of place she wished she'd had as a child. The kind of place Leo deserved. The kind of place the town had needed for decades. Behind her, the glass doors slid open and Leo stepped out. Taller now, surer of himself, carrying a stack of handmade flyers under his arm. His hair blew in the wind as he grinned up at her. "Mom," he said, breathless with excitement, "the kids from the drama club are ready. They want to start rehearsals early." Elena laughed softly, an easy, unburdened laugh she hadn't known she was capable of a year ago. "Let's not rush the whole day," she said, brushing dust off his sleeve. Opening night is still weeks away. But they're excited. Leo insisted, his eyes shining. They said the big room feels like magic. Elena looked through the tall windows. Sunlight poured into the studio, splashing across polished floors and blank canvases waiting for color. It is magic, she whispered, mostly to herself, because this place wasn't built by luck. It was built by choice, by courage, by refusing to let greed define the story she uncovered in the dark. She stepped inside, breathing in the scent of fresh paint and clean wood. The halls echoed with distant voices, students tuning instruments, others laughing as they arranged programs and art pieces for the upcoming community showcase. Every sound felt like a healing note played over an old wound, and in that gentle commotion came a soft, familiar voice from a doorway. Elena. She turned. Ms. Roland, the elderly archivist who once handed her Victor Laskin's dusty testimonies, stood with a cane, smiling warmly. Her eyes sparkled behind thick glasses. "You kept your promise," she said. "You brought life back to this place." Elena's chest tightened with emotion. "We all did," she replied. "It wasn't just me." Ms. Roland stepped closer. "Most people run from the dark parts of history, Elena. You didn't run, you rebuilt." Elena swallowed hard. The memories flickered faintly, scorch marks, metallic knocking, the vault's heartbeat, the creature's final breath. But they no longer felt like chains dragging her downward. They felt like old echoes fading into the distance. "Thank you," she whispered. The older woman touched her hand gently. "You turned a grave into a garden. That's something very few people dare to do." Leo tugged Elena's arm, pulling her attention toward the rehearsal hall. "Come on, Mom. They're waiting for you." Elena followed him down the bright hallway, her footsteps soft against the polished floor. Sunlight streamed through the high windows, casting long, warm rays across the walls. Posters of upcoming workshops lined the corridor, painting classes, guitar lessons, community storytelling events. All things the town had never had before. At the end of the hall, Leo paused and pointed through a tall window toward the courtyard outside. "Look," he said. Elena did. Children ran across the open space, chasing each other between newly planted trees. Volunteers set up picnic blankets and tables. The fountain gurgled softly at the center, built over the exact spot where the old casino entrance once stood. Elena let the moment fill her, a place that once destroyed lives, now uplifted them, and the wind that brushed her cheek felt like a quiet acknowledgment, not haunting, not warning, but grateful. She rested a hand on Leo's shoulder. "Ready for the next chapter?" she asked. He nodded, smiling. "I think it's already started." Elena felt a warmth rise through her chest, steady and peaceful. For the first time in years, the future wasn't a storm waiting to break. It was a sunrise, soft, bright, promising. As she turned toward the studio doors and stepped into the room filled with life and laughter, Elena realized something simple and extraordinary. The past had shaped her, but it no longer owned her. The future was hers to build, and she was already building it. The day unfolded in gentle waves, soft laughter echoing down the halls, sunlight drifting slowly across the studio floors, the warm hum of creation alive in every room. Elena walked through it all with a quiet awe, feeling each moment settle inside her like pieces of a life she once believed she'd never reach. The past year had carved deep lines of strength into her heart, but now she felt something she hadn't known in years: lightness, freedom, a sense of being exactly where she was meant to be. As the afternoon sun stretched long golden fingers across the courtyard, Elena stepped outside to breathe in the desert air. It no longer smelled of smoke or silence. It smelled like wet soil from the new garden beds, like fresh paint, like the faint perfume of chalk dust drifting from open classroom windows. Children's voices floated across the courtyard in bursts of joy and argument and unstoppable imagination. A world reborn. She settled onto a bench beneath one of the young desert willows, its leaves trembling in the warm breeze. A year ago, nothing could grow here. Now the tree cast a soft shade over the courtyard, its roots gripping gently into soil that once held ashes. Leo ran up to her with a stack of freshly painted posters, cheeks flushed with excitement. "Mom, look, everyone's signing up for the summer programs." She thumbed through the papers: music classes, sculpture workshops, story circles, youth leadership groups. Lines of names written in messy pencil and bold marker ink filled every sheet. "This is incredible," she said. Leo sat beside her, swinging his legs. "It doesn't feel like the desert anymore. It feels like a home." Elena smiled softly. "That's what we wanted. Not riches, not fame, not a legacy built on secrets or greed. Just home. A place where people could walk through the doors and leave heavier burdens outside. A place where young hands could build instead of break. A place that promised second chances because she had needed one more than anyone." Footsteps approached from the walkway behind her, a familiar, measured pace. Elena looked up to see Detective Ramirez, the lead investigator from the case, hands in his pockets, hair now more silver than she remembered. He carried an envelope. "Elena," he greeted with a warm nod. "Beautiful day for a reopening." "It is," she said. "Everything turned out better than I ever expected." He handed her the envelope. "The state wanted me to give you this personally. Final documentation from the case. Closure." The words settled over her, not heavy, not sharp, but gentle. Like the last stitch in a wound that had finally healed. She opened the envelope and scanned the documents: official closure notices, her award letter, and the final report. One line caught her eye: "No further anomalies detected in the sublevel, vault permanently sealed." Her breath steadied. Ramirez watched her carefully. "We didn't release the full details to the public as you requested," he said. "People don't need fear, they need hope, and they sure have it now." She folded the papers slowly. "Thank you for everything." He tipped his head. "You did the hard part. We just followed the truth you uncovered." Leo leaned forward. "So nothing is coming back out, right?" Ramirez crouched down to meet his eyes. "No, kid, nothing is coming back. The past stays buried now." Elena placed a hand on Leo's back, and the detective rose, offering one last kind smile before heading toward the parking lot. Leo watched him go, then rested his head against her shoulder. "Mom," he said softly. "Yes. Do you ever miss the old building?" Elena stared out at the courtyard, where children ran between the shadows of new trees, and volunteers arranged benches for an evening poetry event. She thought of the dark hallways, the metallic knocking, the sealed steel door that even fire couldn't melt. She thought of Victor Laskin's desperate voice recorded on brittle tape. She thought of the creature's final, exhausted breath. And she thought of what remained now: not fear, not pain, not secrets, just a space filled with life. "No," she whispered, "not even a little." Leo smiled, satisfied. A warm gust of wind swept across the courtyard, carrying the sound of a guitar tuning inside, the faint chime of laughter, the rhythm of a place finally alive again. Elena closed her eyes and let the warmth sink into her skin. A hand tapped her shoulder. She opened her eyes to see a young girl holding a handmade bracelet, shy but determined. "MS Marquez," she said quietly. "I made this for you, for, everything." Elena accepted it gently, a simple string bracelet with tiny beads the color of sunrise. "Thank you," she said, emotion thick in her voice. "This means more than you know." The girl blushed and ran back inside. Elena slipped the bracelet onto her wrist. Leo nudged her gently. "Mom, do you think this place will stay like this forever?" She looked at him, her son, her heartbeat, her reason for every hard choice, and brushed his cheek with her thumb. "It will," she said, "because it's built on truth now, not secrets, not lies, and truth lasts. The sun dipped lower, turning the courtyard to gold. Elena rose, Leo's hand in hers, and together they walked toward the main hall where the evening gathering would soon begin. Songs, stories, laughter, life. As Elena stepped across the threshold, she felt a quiet certainty settle deep within her. She had rewritten the legacy of the desert. Not through wealth or power, but through love, courage, and a new beginning. And in the soft glow of fading daylight, she knew the past had finally released its hold, because she had chosen a future stronger than fear could ever be.